Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this very interesting webinar on a topic that is not covered as often as it should be. We will talk about the differences between the general solicitation and Omnibus versus targeted programs at certain NIH institutes. There are both benefits and downsides to each one, and knowing what those things are and at what point you need to focus on a targeted program and at what point you need to go with your own determined topic that fits the right priorities of an institute within NIH, going through Omnibus solicitation. This all will be covered. We'll also talk at the beginning a little bit about the general things related to NIH, SBIR, STTR programs. So you'll get a primer on those programs in general, and then later we will go into specifics and differences between Omnibus and targeted. And prior to starting conversation about all that, we will share with you a little bit about what Accelerator Network and XLerateHealth are offering to participants in SBIR and in other programs that are our efforts are funded by NIH over the last 5.5, close to 6 years now. And we would like to people like yourself, entrepreneurs, founders, to take advantage of some of those programs that are available to you. Next slide, please, Steph. Yep. So a couple of words about who we are as XLerateHealth, and give you a little bit of a background. We're a nationally recognized healthcare accelerator. We're headquartered in Louisville, Kentucky, but have national and international presence since 2012. We worked with more than 1,000 startup companies in life sciences, all areas of life sciences, and work with both university-based faculty, researchers and students, and clinicians, and also non-university entrepreneurs. We have a very large group of mentors and subject matter experts, have relationships with various health systems, universities, and other organizations that are important in helping bring new innovations to the market. We are recipients to several NIH awards, Small Business Administration awards, and now 6 Mott Foundation grants. I'm joined here by my colleague, Jackie Wilmot, who is the CEO of XLerateHealth. I'm Eugene Krenzel, Chief Scientific Officer and Vice President for Strategic Partnerships and Alliances. Next slide, please. We want to share with you some of the startup programs that we have available. Next slide, please. First of all, it's our signature program, XLerateHealth Bootcamp. It's a 12-week healthcare accelerator, and our target audience are early stage startups in various areas of biomedical and healthcare related innovations. We run that program annually. Next slide, please. We also do intercession programs where we work with a little bit further stage entrepreneurs to get them what they help they need over 18 months. And it's a little bit more mature companies with longer path to market. Quite a few of you might fit that that profile. Next. We run an XLerateHealth pre-accelerator. It's a very early stage or even idea stage, where it is a 10-week program developed to help the founders and entrepreneurs obtain understanding of how you think through the commercial potential of your idea and how to make a decision whether to pursue commercialization. Next slide, please. We have our main NIH-funded program at this point that is funded by NIGMS, and it's called NIH IRAD, Idea States Regional Entrepreneurship Development Program. People on that slide are people from our last cohort. We're running a new cohort coming up next month. So we're looking forward to working with a new group of people. You will get the slides of this presentation, and the video recording will be available to you, so you don't need to take any particular notes or do screenshots here. It will all be available to you, and you can take a look later on. Next slide, please. That next slide represents feedback that, yes, thank you. Yeah, feedback that we have obtained from our participants, just to get you an idea what entrepreneurs like yourself see the value in what our programs are. You should be able to read that on your own time when you get the slides. Next, please. We run SBIR one-on-one coaching program, providing support for strategies and techniques about going into their SBIR, STTR applications, primarily focusing on NIH, but also talking about NSF. It's a 10-week virtual program now, run 3 times a year, with the goal to both develop strategies and techniques for our participants to submit a successful SBIR, STTR application, and also leverage potential TABA commercialization, technical and business assistance services support post-award. You will hear about those programs from our participants at NIH later in this event today. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned with TABA, we're one of the companies that is providing TABA services to interested participants, and there are multiple areas how we can enhance a startup's performance and competitiveness through that guidance and solutions that are tailored to your particular needs. If you are interested to go into more details about that, we can talk later on. Please mute yourself, everybody. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. We have a program called Executives on Roster, which we are relaunching at the end of this year. It's executive and startups matching service, which we are very excited about. It's personalized matching of startups to advisors and executives. A lot of entrepreneurs and founders and early stage startups, especially academic entrepreneurs, have issues with trying to recruit executive talent and experts on the business side or program development side, and sometimes even technical side to help in bringing their innovation to the market. We are building that network of executives on roster to help. Next. Okay, so thank you so much. This is it for my presentation. This is QR code that you can use to find out more about our programs. You can also reach out directly to me at my email here, or go to the website www.XLerateHealth.com. Before we go to our next slides, I just want to make sure that everybody here understands how important it is to get that distinction between Omnibus and targeted programs. A lot of those things are not NIH-wide and are specific to individual institutes. That's why we brought today experts that are very attuned to their institute needs on those targeted programs, and they will share with you all of those details and important considerations. But first, we'll talk about general SBIR, STTR at NIH. Stephanie, yes, take it away.
Thank you so much, Eugene. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yasmin, and I am from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute at the NIH. Today, we're going to be digging into some information about NIH's Seed Fund and how to navigate the NIH Small Business Grant opportunities. Next slide, please. So just a very, very early warning that we're going to be going through a lot of information today, and I encourage you to visit our small business program website, which has a wealth of information and resources. Next slide, please. The HHS mission is to enhance the health and well-being of all Americans, and the small business program supports this mission by helping great innovations into the hands of patients, clinicians, caregivers, and researchers who need them. NIH, ARPA-H, CDC, FDA, and ACL all have SBIR programs. In addition, NIH and ARPA-H also have STTR programs. We encourage you to not only look at the NIH, but the other components of Health and Human Services as well. Next slide, please. The NIH mission can be summarized as turning discoveries into health, and the small business program helps get those innovations into the hands of patients, clinicians, caregivers, researchers that need them. Next slide, please. So these are congressionally mandated programs. We have about $1.4 billion of dedicated funding set aside from our extramural research budget. This funding can be broken out in both the SBIR Small Business Innovation Research and STTR Small Business Transfer Program. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between these two programs. And a key point to remember is that they are two separate programs, but they are very similar in their scope and their mission. Next slide, please. First, really quickly, I want to look at this slide with you all. It exemplifies success stories of innovators that we have from all around the country. The success stories are available on the Small Business Success Stories page, and we support not just companies on the major coasts, but all through Central America, including rural and central cities as well. Next slide, please. These phase programs are part of legislation. The phases aren't clinical trial phases. A phase 1 is a feasibility study, and a phase 2 is full research and development. There are several routes to enter the program. There is the standard phase 1 and phase 2. This is where you come in, you submit a phase 1, you do that work, and then you'll submit to a phase 2. There's also a mechanism called a fast track, and this combines the phase 1 and phase 2 into a single proposal. Then there is a direct to phase 2, which allows companies that have already done that phase 1 work, possibly with funding outside of the SBIR STTR program, and it allows them to go directly into a phase 2. Now, this is only SBIRs, so STTRs cannot go into the direct to phase 2 route. Next slide, please. So let's look at who's eligible to apply. When we talk about small businesses, what we're talking about is listed on the slide with the criteria, and the eligibility criteria is set by the Small Business Administration and set legislation. You can see bulleted out that the small business criteria is on the slide, and more information is available on our website. Key factor to remember is that you have to be a U.S. for-profit business that's considered small. So that's 500 or fewer employees, and it has to be individual ownership. Eligibility is determined at the time of award, and applicants provide that information around eligibility through the funding agreement certification. The work has to be done within the U.S. There are a few exceptions. We recognize that there might be times where work can't be done in the U.S. Possibly there might be a small patient population, but for the most part, with few exceptions, the work has to be done in the United States. And it's important to note that those exceptions aren't related to cost or partnering. So regardless of how you get to a phase 2, we have several specific programs that allow you to bridge that gap between the phase 2 and hitting the commercial market partner or investor. Next slide, please. The vast majority of our funding goes to investigator-initiated grant applications through our Omnibus solicitations, which you heard about earlier. And that's open for 3 standard receipt dates per year, and you can read more about them again on our website. Next slide, please. Now, when we say investor-initiated grants, that comes in through our general Omnibus solicitations. Those are our parent grant solicitations. These Omnibus solicitations are open topic solicitations, and we have 2 sets, one for STTR and one STTR. And then we also have some for clinical trials and non-clinical trials. Regardless if you want to submit for an SBIR or STTR clinical trials or not, it's important to really read the program descriptions and research topic sections in each solicitation. Each individual institute and center at NIH utilizes the program a little bit differently, and it's important to understand where you're likely to be assigned. and make sure that you're falling within the guidelines of that institute and center. There are targeted solicitations and specific grant solicitations. Next slide, please. So there are specific opportunities for SBIR versus STTR. The main difference between the two is that SBIR allows for partnering, while STTR requires a nonprofit research institution partner, such as a university. The differences in policy that you see on the slide around the work requirement and the principal investigator stem from the difference around partnering. So regardless if you do an SBIR or STTR, the award is always made to the small business. Next slide, please. So another key element to keep in mind is the decision points in clinical trials. It's important to remember that if you're doing human subject studies, you'll need to take a close look at the broad NIH definition of clinical trials. And now it's not based on the size of the clinical trial, so one or human subjects can be considered a clinical trial. The definition is also not based on risk. So we highly encourage that you use a decision tool that is noted in the slide. And lastly, it's important to note that not all funding opportunity announcements or institutes and centers, they support the clinical trial through the SBIR STTR program. So again, highly recommend that you use the tool to see where you fall in. Next slide, please. So this slide provides a great overview of the application and review process. The SBIR and STTR program uses this application and review process, and from the time of application submission to the time of award, it'll take about 9 months, and you will receive feedback at specific points along the way from the point of submission to the final 9-month mark. There's 2 levels of peer review. The first peer review is done through a scientific review group, and this group does the majority of reviews, and there aren't specific study sections assigned to only one institute. They're actually assigned around specific topics. And the second point is when it goes to advisory council. Next slide, please. So getting ready to submit. You'll need to submit your applications electronically. And the most important takeaway from this slide is that there are required registrations to do so. And it's very important to register and submit your application early. Unfortunately, there's no way of getting around these requirements, so please begin the process early and don't wait for the final hour to begin. It's important that you create an ERA Commons account for not only the company, but all principal investigators as well. Lastly, there is also a requirement of 2-factor authentication. So the sooner you start this process, the better set you will be. Next slide, please. Now we have several resources to help you in applying. On our website, you can find application instructions, an annotated form set, sample applications, and also state resources through the Small Business Administration FAST program. Links to all these resources are available online, and application instructions are a significant read, but they're very helpful and that they may also answer a lot of the questions that you may have. And you may also look at the FAQs on our webpage as well. Next slide, please. The most important piece of advice is to speak to a program officer at least a month before the application deadline. You can find a list of SBIR program officers on the website. You can scroll down on the page and you'll find the institute and center specific contact. Now, if you're not sure who to contact or where your application might fall, you can contact C through the direct inbox and they'll be able to better direct you. And another resource is to use the Research Portfolio Online Reporting Tools or Report. If you go to report.nih.gov, you can go and see a database of the abstracts of all the SBIRs and STTRs that have been provided and funded by NIH. It's going to help you determine 2 things. The first is what's been funded previously, so you can see who else is out there doing that work in a different area. And 2, you can specifically see which institute and center that those different grant applications and grants were assigned to. Next slide, please. The fun part, the review criteria, it's actually included in the notice of funding opportunity. It's important to look at the criteria provided, which provides a scored criteria in 5 areas listed in the first block on the left. And that covers the areas of significance, investigators, innovation, approach, and environment. The review criteria is ultimately a rubric, so you're sort of given the answers, if you will. You just have to follow the guidelines provided. And the scores are individual from 1 to 9, 1 being the best and 9 being the worst. And next we have the additional criteria that aren't scored individually. And you can see that criteria listed on the bottom left block. These apply to SBIRs and STTR phase-specific considerations. And then we have additional review considerations listed in the top right block, which are not phased into the scoring, and the budget and period of duration of the grant are not part of the scored criterion. Next slide, please. A key takeaway from this slide is that the application process, yes, it's long, but it's definitely worthwhile. The slide provides examples of 2 funded companies who tried and tried again and proved to be successful in their journey. You should remain tenacious and be prepared to resubmit. About 50% of applications submitted are not discussed on the first submission, but all applications do receive reviewer comments, and it's really important to address all the comments prior to resubmission. Next slide, please. So we want our awardees to succeed, and we offer a number of programs to do that. And the first is the technical and business assistance options. So both funding and centralized programs, this program is the phase 1. It's something that you can request post-award. This needs assessment provides third-party, unbiased assessment of areas that are critical of your success in the marketplace. This can be used to better define your gaps and needs in the phase 2. So we're in the application request tab of funding up to $50,000 to hire vendors to improve in those areas. For more information, the link is available on the slide. Next slide, please. We recognize many innovators are new to the SBIR and STTR program, and they might be new to entrepreneurship as well. We have a number of ways that we support innovators. We have regulatory and business development consultants on staff, and we have partnering and investment opportunities to help bridge the gap between the phase 2 and the marketplace partner or investors. These regulatory and business development consultants can help mentor you and support you, and basically provide with your help of your assistant to attend some of these events, and not limited to that are listed on the left. Next slide, please. We provide NIH Entrepreneurship Bootcamp that helps pre-SBIR early stage innovator teams through entrepreneurship, customer discovery, and business model validation. We also help companies translate their technologies through the C3I or ICORPS program. We also support companies translate their technologies either more on the device side in the concept to clinic commercialization innovation or the C3I, or through ICOR at NIH. We specifically for innovators to think about their business model. And these programs are for individuals who have received NIH funding. Next, please. The Diversity Supplement Program, it's a great way to increase diversity within your company. To be eligible, you must currently have an active phase 1, phase 2, or fast track award. The project and budget periods must be within the approved project period for the existing parent award. The applications can be submitted on a rolling basis. 5,000 to no more than 100,000 can be requested depending on the career level of the candidate. Lastly, a key, very important factor to highlight is that the program started with 17 participating ICs, and now all 24 NIH institutes and centers and some CDC centers as well participate in this program. For more information, you can follow the link. Next slide, please. So connect with us if you have any questions or you want to check in at any point. Please use these different ways of contact to reach out and get some help. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Linda Zane.
Before we go to Linda, I just want to make sure that, excuse me, that if participants have any questions, you can type them into the chat, and we will get either answer that within the chat, or we will, at the end, we'll let you speak up and ask that question directly during the Q&A session at the end. Sorry, Linda, you go ahead.
Hi. So I'm Linda Zane, Program Director at the National Cancer Institute Small Business Innovation Research Development Center. And today I'm going to talk to you about our funding opportunities specific at NCI. So can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, next slide. Okay, so Yasamin already talked to you about phase 1, phase 2, and direct to phase 2 fast track. I'm just going to add that at NCI, our budget limit for so in the Omnibus solicitation, there is a budget limit, but we are a budget limit higher than that at NCI. It's $400,000 for phase 1 and $2.25 million for phase 2. And so for a fast track, it's $2.65 million. And because we recognize that there is a funding gap between phase 2 and phase 3, it's difficult to get some private funding to develop the technology after phase 2. We have the NCI SBIR phase 2B Bridge Award. The applicant can request up to $4.5 million over 2 to 3 years, and it's a matching program. So to be able to request 4.5 million, you need to have raised 4.5 million in private funding. If you request 2 million, you need to have raised $2 million in private funding. So, and we also realize, and I'd like to mention also for phase 1, in the general omnibus solicitation, it's written that preliminary data are not required. That is not really true for NCI. To be competitive, because we receive a lot of application, really to be competitive, you need to have some preliminary data. But we also realize that sometimes you have a great idea, you don't have the funding to get some preliminary data to apply for a phase 1. So we created the concept award. It's for high risk, high reward project. And it's not a grant, it's a contract. And it's $300,000 for a year. And it's only for a project in rare and or pediatric cancer. Next slide, please. So here it's just to give you a quick snapshot of the type of technology that we found. We have some technology that cover the entire NCI mission. So it can be technology for cancer prevention, for therapeutics, some biologics, small molecules, but also digital health device, imaging device, diagnostic, research tool. So anyway, our portfolio is technology agnostic, and we found more than 400, and we currently have more than 450 active projects, and we have 12 program directors that manage this project. 80% of our projects are funded through a grant mechanism, and about 20% are funded through a contract mechanism. Can you please go to the next slide? Yeah, so here it's the list. It's the list of the solicitation of our funding opportunities. I'm not going to talk to you about the Omnibus solicitation, given that Yasamin did it, but I'm just going to mention the 4 next lines. They are NOSIs. NOSIs are notice of special interest. They are for specific topics. And there are some NOSIs where we sign up with other institutes, but for example, we have a topic that is specific for cancer. For example, this one, the utilization of cohort and prospective study design for liquid biopsy assay validation for early detection of cancer. And so they are usually, these NOSI are, you apply with the Omnibus solicitation, but you precise that you are responsive to the NOSI. And the next 3 solicitations are, so the receipt date recently passed. It was in August. The Small Business Transition Grant, it's for early career scientists. So it's modeled after the K-99. It's to help early career scientists to transition from an academic institution to a small business. The due date is August. So as I said, it just passed. And the NCR SBIR Phase 2B Bridge Award, I talk quickly about it. It's to cross the valley of death. Same, the due date was August, and we have the NCI SBIR Concept Award for high risk, high reward project in rare and pediatric cancer. And the due date is September, but to submit a full proposal, you have to submit a white paper, and the due date was July. And finally, the last solicitation is the contract solicitation. So we used NIH used contract for some specific topics. And we at NCI, we use that quite a lot. So every year we have between 10 and 15 topics that are selected, like they are written by colleagues at in different division at NCI, so it's a cross NCI project, and to establish this contract solicitation, and the due date is October 18th. And this year we have 13 contract topics. I will show them in the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I mentioned the Innovative Concept Award. So it's for high risk, high reward project in rare and pediatric cancer. It's a contract mechanism of $300,000 for a year, and no preliminary data are required. You have to submit a white paper sometime in July, and then the full you get some feedback from our program. From some reviewer within NCI, and then based on this feedback, you are invited to submit a proposal. The proposals are short; they are about 25 pages, and the main review criteria for this to get for this solicitation is the innovation of the technology that you are proposing. And these awards are made quite rapidly. They are made within 6 months. And I will say through the Omnibus solicitation, yes, I mean, mentioned 9 months. I think for us, it's more like closer to 11 months, depending on the case. But so yes, can you go same slide, but click one more time, please? Okay. And so if you get awarded an innovative concept award, then you will be participating in the NIH iCorps program, which is an entrepreneurial immersion program of 8 weeks. And for the top performers, they will be encouraged to transition to a phase 2 and to submit an application for a phase 2, and they will be able to request up to $3 million. And for a fast track, they can submit a proposal for a fast track and for a funding of $3.5 million. And we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. And I mentioned the small business transition grant. So it's modeled after the K-99. It's for early career entrepreneur, early career scientists to transition from an academic institution to the small business. And so it's not only for postdoc, it can be postdoc, master student, PhD student. The main criteria is you need to have got your last degree 10 years before applying. And it's a mentoring program, so you will need to have two mentors, a scientific technical mentor and an entrepreneur as a mentor. You can apply for a phase 1 STTR and request $400,000 in funding, or a fast track, which will be a phase 1 STTR and then a phase 2 SBIR. So the early career scientists will start in the academic institution with a phase 1 STTR, and then in phase 2 transition to the small business, and the funding will be a phase 2 SBIR. This grant was created to stimulate the transfer of early career scientists as well as technology from the academic lab into small business. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. And here is just the list of the contract topics for this year. So they are very specific topics. There are some topics for cancer prevention, some diagnostic, therapeutics, software, as well as research tools. Can you go to the next slide, please? I also mentioned in a previous slide the Phase 2B Bridge Award. As I said, you can request up to $4.5 million over 2 to 3 years. The deadline is August, and it's to be eligible, you have to be a Phase 2 awardee from any federal agency with project relevant to NCI mission, and you have to have raised, or at least have, even if you have not raised, when you apply, you need to have letters that saying that by the time you get the notice of award, some private investor will match the money that you will get through NCI. And so this award was created to support technology validation and clinical translation to accomplish critical milestones toward commercialization. And since its creation in 2009, we gave $65 million in funding, and the bridge award recipients then raised $358 million in follow-on funding. So it's a more than 5-to-1 ratio in terms of third-party matching funds to NCI funding. And this bridge award resulted in 17 clinical trials, 19 product launches, some biologic license application submissions, some FDA breakthrough and orphan designation, some merger and acquisition, and more. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yes, I mentioned already, like, so it's our supplemental funding opportunity. As I mentioned, the diversity supplement, it's up to, you can request up to $150,000 in direct costs. It's for small business to hire candidate to hire employees from different scientists from diverse backgrounds, early career scientists from diverse backgrounds. We have some administrative supplements. So for SBIR, STTR Phase 1 and Phase 2 awardees, to accelerate their development and achieve their next critical milestone, they can request up to $150,000 in direct costs. And we recently added a supplement of $50,000 in total costs for companies, small business working on novel medical device that will need a reimbursement code because it's a new medical device. And so for them to be able to participate in the early payer feedback program at CDRH, they will need to hire maybe a consultant specialized in reimbursement and stuff. So to cover this cost, we created this supplement. And so it's for Phase 2 SBIR, STTR awardee working on a novel medical device. And finally, we have the commercialization readiness pilot program. Yes, also mentioned it. In our case, it's you can request up to $250,000 in total cost. Can you go to the next slide, please? And so here it's just a quick overview because we are limited with time. A quick overview of the type of commercialization resources that we have. And I highlighted in yellow the one that are specific, specific to NCI. We have the peer learning and networking webinar series. There are different topics. For example, we had so some successful awardees they come and they will make these 10-minute videos of how to write a good specific aims page. And so we have 4 different videos, 4 different persons presented, one on diagnostic, one on therapeutic, one on software, etc., etc. We have the Women Innovation Network. It's for women entrepreneurs to learn from one another and share their insight on business and technology development. We have the CARE program. CARE stands for Connecting Awardees with Regulatory Experts. It's to connect awardees with regulatory experts at the FDA in a non-formal way through NCI. And we have some mentoring program with some experienced mentors, entrepreneurs, the executive roundtable, and the industry mentoring and assistance program. And I'll stop there. I think next slide. So if you have any question, you can contact us at ncisbir@mail.nih.gov. Here is our phone number. And so don't hesitate if you have any question. Thank you.
And we're back to Yas.
So hello again. As a reintroduction, I'm Yasmin, and I'm with the Innovation and Commercialization Office at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. I'm very excited to be able to talk to you today about funding and additional product development resources for the heart, lung, blood, and sleep technologies. Next slide, please. So the NHLBI small business programs are meant to fund innovative and commercially promising products to prevent, treat, and diagnose heart, lung, blood, and sleep-related diseases. We fund a lot of different types of technologies in our office. We currently fund over 300 active projects, and the pie chart shows you the approximate technological breakdown of what types of technologies we fund. About a third of our portfolio goes to therapeutics, which includes both small molecules and biologics. Devices also take up a good portion of our portfolio, and we also support monitoring devices, health IT, digital health type solutions, along with imaging devices. The remaining portion of our portfolio consists of in vitro diagnostics and research tools. It's important to remember that the breakdown changes based on the types of applications we receive through the Omnibus notices of funding opportunity. We like to fund an array of technology as long as they fall within our mission space, which you can find on our website. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, the NHLBI likes to fund technologies related to heart, lung, blood, and sleep disorders. This diagram does a great job at showing a brief overview of some of those diseases that are of the interest within our mission space, but do keep in mind the diagram does not include every disease. And if you're wondering if your device, drug, or technology is going to be of interest, you can always reach out to us and ask. And there's one minor caveat: if you're focusing on blood or lung cancers, you'll want to reach out to our sister institute, the National Cancer Institute. Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of all the services available in our office. Now, our office does house a small business program, but we also have several add-on or supplemental programs available, which are focused on diversity and commercialization. Also, when you receive your award, our office provides tailored support throughout the duration of your work period. And we offer advisory services, partner opportunities for you to go to pitch your technologies at conferences. Next slide, please. So in addition to the Small Business Omnibus, we have several other targeted funding opportunity announcements. There are several different targeted opportunities that we participate in at the moment. Be sure that you contact us when you're at the 6-month mark of your phase 1 to start the discussions on a phase 2. It goes by very quickly, and we'll also go over the evaluation criterion of the commercialization section for the phase 2 grant application. Next slide, please. Furthermore, we participate in targeted opportunities, which are notices of special interest that are attached to the Omnibus and other RFAs that have special set-aside funds. Again, you'll want to be sure that you reach out to us at the 6-month mark, if not earlier, of your phase 1 to begin planning for the phase 2. Lastly, you'll want to be sure to pay close attention to the eligibility and review criterion of the notice. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to draw focus on a few of funding opportunities mentioned on the previous slide that have upcoming due dates. The Innovations for Healthy Living SBIR RFA is focused on developing a commercialized technology or service aiming to provide and improve minority health, or by recusing and eliminating health disparities. You can see the list of technologies NHLBI is specifically interested in, and the next due date is coming up in December. Next slide, please. The HEAL initiative supports the development of non-addictive therapeutics and pain management strategies. This RFA is funded from special set-aside funds, and the areas of interest of the NHLBI are listed on the slide. The next due date for this would be January 5th in the new year. And next slide, please. The Small Business Transition Grant for new entrepreneurs, it aims to support the career and development and the conduct of research and development under a new entrepreneur's direction. You'll want to pay close attention to the definition of a new entrepreneur as a program director or principal investigator. This opportunity participates in the standard omnibus receipt dates, so there's 3, and you can review the criterion of each notice through the funding links provided. Next slide, please. So please do reach out to us if you have any questions via email. You can also follow NHLBI on Twitter or X, or visit our website for more information. I also recommend that you subscribe to our newsletter. It goes out the first week of each month, and that's where we advertise our new programs or other events. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Rajesh Kumar. I am a program officer in the Small Business Office of National Institute on Aging, and we provide about $150 million in grant funding annually in the area of National Institute on Aging. Next slide, please. So as you can imagine, we are National Institute on Aging, so our focus is mainly on age-related disease and conditions. So we have specific or special interest also in some other particular areas, like, for example, in advancing research on Alzheimer's disease and Alzheimer's disease-related dementias. We also have focus on interventions that promote independence and aging in place of choice of our senior citizens. And we also support research tools that promote efficiency, quality, and cost effectiveness of aging-related quantitative or qualitative data. We also participate in programs that just Yas mentioned about improving minority health and eliminating health disparities. We also have a special focus on digital technologies for early detection, characterization, and monitoring of senescence-related changes. As I mentioned, our focus is on age-related disease and conditions, so most of your grants can go to Omnibus solicitations. And on specific topics, I will tell you which program announcements we have. Next slides, please. So I said our focus, big focus is on Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. So this is, you can see by this announcement, PAS, that means this is a program announcement with set aside funds. That means very important to us. So we assigned a specific amount for this opportunity. And this both SBIR and STTR grants are available. You can have clinical trials or not have it. Standard due dates are January, April, and September 5th of these months. And please note that the funding limits for this is, for phase 1 is pretty high, like $500,000, and for phase 2, $2.5 million. You can also apply for phase 2B for $3 million. And so in addition to NIA, NINDS that you will hear next from Dr. Forbes, also participate in this funding opportunity. Okay, next slide, please. And so the funding opportunity, like which is specific to NIA, is also this particular one is a notice of special interest. So NOJI, as mentioned by previous speakers, is like when these are for specific areas of interest for institutes, and which can solicit applications under different funding opportunity announcements. So in this case, like this is issued by National Institute on Aging, and our focus on small business digital technologies for early detection, characterization, and monitoring of senescence-related changes, which are outside of clinical settings. So citing this particular NOJI, you can apply to Omnibus solicitations, which are listed here. And I would like to mention particularly like why it is so important to read the funding opportunity announcements carefully. Like you will see the the no phone numbers are old because this was the time when this NOG came out, but this is applicable to any subsequent renewal of these NOFOs. Now these are PA24 because of the new announcements. And when you look for the budget, you should look at these program descriptions and research. You will see a link here. You can see on a particular topic what budget you can request. Say, for example, in case of NIA, you can request, actually this is specific to NIA, so you can request 400K for normal aging related research, but if your focus is on Alzheimer's, you can request up to 500K for phase 1. And so next slide, please. And in addition to these funding opportunities, we also participate in contracts. So this year we are soliciting contracts on 3 topics. And you must realize that contracts are a little different than grants, because here in contracts, you have to deliver specific deliverables. There's a lot involved. Our involvement is a lot more in what the deliverables are. And so in this year, we have 3 topics. One is digital technologies as tools to screen and monitor Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. So this is basically to encourage small businesses to participate in FDA's MDDT program. These are medical devices development tool. I will encourage you to go to their website and find out what this program is. And you can see the budget limits here. And just to point out that on September 23rd, there will be a webinar organized by SEED office. And you can find those details there. If you are interested in these contract topics, please attend those webinars. So second topic is on modeling aging through microphysiological systems. It's basically developing 3D tissue constructs so that we can study biological processes like molecular or modeling of molecular cellular aging for drug discovery and understanding biological processes. The third topic is using generative AI and multimodal and generative AI to incorporate in social robotics to provide care for our older populations. Again, listen to that webinar or go to these NIA contract solicitations to learn more about these. Next. And so so those topics were but of particular emphasis to NIA or specific to NIA. And then we also participate in other funding opportunities, which my colleague at NHLBI also mentioned they participate. So this is a request for application. This is innovation for healthy living, improving minority health and eliminating health disparities. And so we participate in SBIR program, but not in the STTR program. So again, that emphasizes how important it is to read the funding opportunity, which institute participate in them, which does not. And the purpose of this, as was mentioned before, is to develop product, process, or services for improving minority health or reducing or eliminating health disparities. Next. So we also participate in HEAL initiative initiated by NINDS. This is for removing or stemming the national opioid public health crisis. And again, I'll go read these NOFOs for more information. Next slide, please. And we also participate in the small business transition grants for new entrepreneurs. Like this is a PAR. So previously I had pointed out PAS with set aside funds. So with the PAR, R means that it might have a specific receipt, referral, or review criteria. That's why it's important to read NOFOs again for what are those criteria. And so this is for transitioning for early career researchers who want to transition to entrepreneurial activity. So mentoring is an important component of these. And so if your topic is related to aging, the funding limit is up to 400K. If it is related to Alzheimer's disease, the funding limit is up to 500K. And we participate, NIA participate in both SBIR and STTR programs of this. Next slide, please. And I think that's it for us. And if you have any questions, please reach out to at NIA Small Business at NIS.gov. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Forbes, and I'm with the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. We also go by NINDS or NINDS. And so we can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about really what matters, right? The money. So NINDS has one of the highest budget limits. We are able to go up to $700,000 for phase 1 and also $3 million for phase 2. And so next slide, please. Now, here are the Small Business Administration approved waiver topics that allow for you to go over the budget. So if any of your work falls into any of these categories, you would write your application as you normally would. You could make a reference to one of these topics in your budget justification. And that's about the extent of what you have to do. And then what we'll do internally is we'll confirm and we'll move forward with the budget. Now, we always recommend, if you believe your technology, your product is going to fall within one of these waiver topics, please reach out to a program officer. Now, we can't pre-approve you for a waiver topic, but we can at least help guide you a bit. So it's pretty clear. If you're doing in vivo animal testing, if you're doing any type of drug discovery, chances are it's going to fall under one of the topics. But it's always good to know what they are. And if you are doing that kind of work, state it explicitly in the application. It will just help things out. And again, as my colleague Yasmin mentioned earlier, budget is not part of the rating criteria, but it is something that we look at when it comes to program. You can go to the next slide. So a lot of my colleagues already mentioned some of this, so I won't spend much time here. But again, if you're doing work and you're dealing with research tools or you're dealing with pain, and as my colleague just mentioned, AD, ADRD, anything in the Alzheimer's space, you should be considering these sort of specific initiatives because one, there could be a little bit more money involved. So again, if you're doing Alzheimer's, you should really be considering that initiative. And again, we have opportunities for late-stage activities such as exploratory clinical trials and the phase 2B. Now, one point I'll make is also happening in the chat is about clinical trials. You're going to notice that if you're thinking about doing a clinical trial, NINDS does not participate in the Omnibus clinical trial. We have our own solicitation for that. So it's really important that you're paying attention because if you submit a clinical trial and it comes to NINDS and you submit it through the Omnibus, that will get withdrawn. You'll have to make sure that you are submitting directly to us because we have a different criteria for our clinical trials. Next slide. Now, another thing to sort of consider are cooperative agreements. So these can be, they're different from your typical grant because with cooperative agreements, you're really working in partnership with the federal agency. So here is where you're going to be you'll be working in partnership when it comes to technical assistance, guidance, and other support. So it could look like project oversight by the federal agency from that program, helping in decision-making and providing input, being collaborative when it comes to problem solving, provisions of resources, training capacity and building. It's co-development is the best way to think about a cooperative agreement. And so there are some opportunities that exist there as well in devices, biomarkers, small molecules, and clinical trials. But I will note, this is completely separate from the Omnibus as far as the January, April, September 5th. They have non-standard due dates. So it's really important that if a cooperative agreement piques your interest, that you're making direct contact with the point of contact for that program, because the rules are not going to be the same, but it is an opportunity that exists. Next slide. And then one I'll just mention here is MedTech Blueprint. So this is a great program if you are doing work that is developing medical technologies for neurological disorders. The MedTech Blueprint provides funding and resources to help innovators turn those ideas into practical medical solutions, focusing on devices, diagnostics, and other tools that address unmet clinical needs in neurology. So once again, this is a cooperative agreement. They follow different rules, but if this piques your interest as well, consider it. That will be all for me.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Very, very useful information. Excellent. And for everybody's presenting, and I'm very glad that Jessica touched U grants versus R grants. Those are fantastic programs. I'm speaking from experience as someone who has been an MPI on 2 of those STTRs run as U programs in partnership with NIGMS. And participation from the agency's staff and help in charting the way and implementing is fantastic. It's really true cooperation programs, and people need to know more about it. Very few people understand that U programs exist in SBIR STTR space. It's not very much advertised, so thank you for bringing it up. I would like to open this to questions. At this time, we had quite a few questions that were asked during their session itself in the chat, and I think that all of them were answered. I would like to start this conversation in the Q&A part by posing a question to all our NIH participants and address it. You all said that it is important to reach out to a program officer in advance, and some said a month, sometimes it's more. What is your advice? How would you advise to reach out? Reach out to SBIR coordinator for that institute, or talk to multiple institutes before deciding which one to choose? Because I think that it's important to know that applicants can request a specific institute that their application would be assigned to. It's not always honored, but most of the time it is. So if you could address that, that would be very helpful.
Sure, I'll take this one just to start. So applicants can add 3 institutes that they believe their research most aligns with. And it's like a suggestion to the SRO to say, hey, consider these. Now, when you're going through the Omnibus, it's not guaranteed. So this often happens with us, where you can want us all you want, and that's great. But if your technology and your product does not fit the mission of our institute, we cannot accept it. And that's the thing to remember about all of the institutes. We are mission-based. So that needs to be very clear, especially on the specific aims page, what you're targeting. And so the other thing is, honestly, the sooner the better, because if you wait to get closer to a deadline, like I think I can speak for everyone. About 2 weeks ago, no one had time to speak to anyone as we were getting close to that September 5th deadline. Now things kind of ease up a little bit as we get closer to January. No one has the time. So if you really want people to take the time to read a 1-page description, answer several questions, then be considerate of people's time. And so the further out you reach out, it also gives you the opportunity to get feedback, make corrections, and then come back and maybe have a second or third conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you for suggesting that this is not just one bite at the apple for that conversation. Thank you. Other institutes could comment on that if you agree with that approach, or your institute is doing it a little bit differently.
So
Yeah, so great. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Linda.
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so great points made by Jessica. Agree to all, the sooner the better. Also don't wait for the final hour, and also being mindful again. So have some study aims or even a little bit of a summary abstract ready to review and go over. That would be helpful. And for our institute specifically, you would be reaching out to our small business program coordinator, Dr. Stephanie Davis, and she's actually on the call as well. She'll be the one that you'll be talking about your application through about.
Thank you. And Stephanie, would you typically have that conversation by yourself, or would you direct the applicant to talk to someone who is an expert in that specific sub area that they're going to be applying to, with a PO that manages that specific area? How do you do that?
Great question, Eugene. And this is something that varies pretty strongly by institute. So at our institute, for example, our office does not hold small business grants. So this actually makes a big difference. Usually they will talk to me first, and then I will loop in one of my program director colleagues who's in one of the scientific divisions. And it's always important to kind of talk to the institute staff to get a sense of this. So for example, our institute, Yaz and me, we don't have the grants in our office. NIA is the same way. Their small business office doesn't hold the grants, but NINDS and NCI, their offices that coordinate the small business program, will hold the grants. So my advice is always to reach out to whoever is listed as the small business contact on the SEED website. And even if they have to loop in someone else, they can direct you to the right person.
Thank you. Rajesh and Linda?
Yeah, so I was going to say, as a follow-up to what Jessica said about, yes, asking to meet with the program director as early as possible. I agree, especially, yes, for us, for our time, because we are very busy as we get closer to the due date, but it's also for them. Like I met last week, like 2 days before the due date, with some applicants. I don't know how useful it is for them, like at least for this application, maybe for the resubmission, but how much can they change like 2 days before the due date, you know? So I think it's better for you, also for us, but also for you to apply as soon as possible. And in terms of the institute, like you can request a certain institute, but it's not guaranteed that it's going to go there. We see that a lot. Everything that is cancer related goes to us. And I have some applicants, they are like, yeah, but we didn't want it to go to NCI. We wanted it to go to NIGRI because it's a sequencing technology. And we really made it like really heavy on the sequencing technology, not on the cancer. But unfortunately, everything that is cancer related is going to come to us. So even if you request, like it's not guaranteed that it's going to go. And I can tell you, as soon as there is a lot of cancer, it will come to us. Another thing, I don't remember the last thing I wanted to say. So it was based on what Stephanie said, but yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, Stephanie just made a good point in chat that other institutes can be added as secondary to an application.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that, yes, you can request an institute. If it's cancer, it will go to us, but it's also good to have a dual assignment because our pay line, like it's very competitive. Our pay line is very low, like, and so sometimes we can't fund it, but we can transfer it to the other institute and have it funded. So that, and in our office, we are the program director only manage small business grants and contracts. And we kind of have our expertise. So for example, I'm a diagnostic person. I have some colleagues who are more like therapeutic, some more like software. So I think if you, that's why I didn't put my email address, but the general NCI SBIR email address, because you can contact us at this email address, and then you will be, the email will be transferred to the program director that fits with your, the type of project you are working on, the type of technology you are working on.
Fantastic. Very useful information. Thank you so much. There was also a question about study section. Is it different? And you can request a study section too. It's not a guarantee either. But the question Yan was asking in chat is the same. Is it going to be the same study section for Omnibus versus targeted, or do you run like NINDS runs their own clinical trials, solicitations, would it go to a special study section, or it would go to the same as if it were a clinical trial somewhere else in similar area?
Well, specifically for the clinical trial, those would just go, they would go to the general one. But there are some initiatives where they might do an internal review. And I just want to make one other point about the importance of speaking to a program officer ahead of time. There have been times where if you might have an application and it shares an interest with multiple institutes. So my colleague Linda just spoke, and they're cancer. But now NINDS, we cover a little bit of cancer too. We cover brain tumors, for instance. It's important to speak with us because in some cases, the Center for Scientific Review, they might give your application to one institute, but because we previously reviewed maybe your specific aims and gave you a heads up that yes, we would take this, if there's ever an issue and it gets assigned to another institute, we can use that email as confirmation that yes, we previously said we would take this application. Another quick example is maybe you submitted your first application, your 01, for example, and it went to NIA. But now when you do your resubmission, for some reason, it's getting sent to NINDS. In these cases as well, we can go in, we can have internal conversations and say, well, NIA took the initial application, we're going to send this to them. So that's why it's always important to stay in communication, especially if you're dealing with an area that can have blurred lines.
And I will expand on that little bit, particularly on National Institute on Aging, because most of the diseases are prevalent in aging population. Most chronic diseases are there. And so applicants come with us with the heart issue or like applications focusing on heart or lung or neurological disease or even cancer, saying, well, this happens in aging population or happen mostly in aging population, so why not you fund it? So our advice to them is, okay, since we have a specific institute dealing with those conditions, go there. But if your focus or your solution is most relevant to aging population, is particularly relevant to aging population, or the way you are studying it, like your models or experimental design is focused on targeting aging population, then come to us. So that's how, like when you design your specific aims or your application, you have to keep it in mind, the mission of the institute that you have in mind for the application.
Thank you. That's very important to add on. Any other questions from people in the audience? While you were thinking about, I think that Steph had something that she wanted to ask.
To chime in, so kind of with what Rajesh was saying about overlap between institutes. So one of the things, and I'm going to elaborate a little bit on my secondary assignment comment. So anyone who's applied to the NIH has probably seen you have a primary assignment, then you'll also have secondary assignments. So to use the example of diseases in older adults, we have a lot of applications focused on chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is more common in older adults, but since it is an airway disease, it's almost always going to get assigned to us. But the idea with a secondary institute is sometimes if the primary institute can't fund it, it can get transferred to the secondary. So, and going back to Linda's example, I was at the Human Genome Research Institute for a little bit last year on a detail, and we actually had this where we needed to fund some applications. So there were some that were duly assigned to us and cancer. Cancer couldn't fund them, but we were able to consider them because we didn't get as many high scoring primary assignments. So that's where the secondary assignment can be very useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example. Can you also, or one of you, comment on primary, secondary in case of a targeted program that is sitting within a specific institute? Would you also have a secondary assignment as a possibility, or it has to stay completely inside that institute that runs the program? Maybe Jessica, if you could answer that, or
for the most part at NINDS, it stays with primary. There is very rare cases where it might go to the secondary, and that's like maybe once a round, but for the most part, it's primary. And I think that's just us when it comes to our budget. and the way that we're set up.
Is it happening sometimes that, and I know that that happening with some of those submitted to Omnibus, that it gets something gets funded by an institute that was not even on the list, or could even go from NIH to CDC sometimes. I've seen that happen. Can that happen in case of a targeted program, or this is only in case of the Omnibus application?
Depend on whether that the other institute is participating. So, like, to give an example, a lot of institutes here participate in the HEAL RFAs. Those are led by NINDS, and NINDS is actually secondarily assigned to all of those applications because they are the coordinating institute. But usually what will happen is if, for example, if it's looking at pain in older adults, it'll go to NIA. If it's looking at like pain and sickle cell disease, it'll go to us. So it really, I think it depends on if that institute, the other institute, is also participating. Otherwise, it's hard to transfer.
Got it. Understood. Any more questions that the audience has, or that you may have missed or I have missed in the chat?
I would just like to make a comment. You asked about the study section. So we go through the NIH Center for Scientific Review for the grants for the Omnibus solicitation, but for the contract where we have very specific topics, cancer related, it's an NCI, the review panel, it's a specific emphasis panel, and the reviewer are more than 50% business people, like entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's very good information. Thank you. Thank you for that. We will share the chat and those questions that were answered in chat with the participants. So people who registered for the event but were not able to do it in person would be able to see what questions were asked and answered beyond those that were vocalized in Q&A session. So that will all be done. We will have slides or links to slides, because their slides themselves is a very large file, cannot go by email likely. There link to slides and the link to the recording and the chat will be provided. So you will have that information in the next week or so, as all the registrants will receive a follow-up email on that. Any last moment comments? We're coming close to the end of our allotted time. We have a few minutes. If our presenters would like to say something that is important for the audience to remember.
I do.
Okay.
I just want to mention that NINDS, we do not follow a pay line. We follow what we call a zone of consideration. I often get applicants who might call and say, like, what's your pay line? Meaning, if you get a certain score, anything of that score and better, we're going to pay. And that's not the case with NINDS. So with our zone of consideration, we look at the scores of what came in. And then from there, a zone is sort of determined. And that gives us the flexibility to skip applications where we can focus in on things that within our priority. So for example, if it's between you as a first-time applicant versus another company who has received, $20 million in the last decade from NINDS, we might be able to skip that application and prioritize yours, depending on where it scores, because that's a priority to us. So just keep that in mind, that not every institute follows the zone or the pay line, rather.
Great.
And I think in our case, it's a bit like that too. So we kind of, I shouldn't call it pay line. I don't know how to call it, but we have like, kind of a pay line, but then we also have a gray zone. So if you are in the gray zone, which is just above the pay line, then we discuss within the division based on our priorities, which application should be funded. And it also depends on the money that we have left over at the end of the fiscal year.
Great. There's a very important question in the chat from Cheryl Flynn. Is there a value in applying for a specific NOCI rather than going for the Omnibus If you apply via the Omnibus, but it could be considered for the NOSI, will the application be considered for the NOSI, or is it lost?
Can you repeat the question?
Sorry, yeah, I realized when I wrote it, it wasn't that clear. Basically what I was asking is if you somehow you just weren't aware of a NOSI, and so you apply through the Omnibus, but it actually fits a NOSI, will the Institute consider it for that NOSI? Or will it stay just within the Omnibus, or is it like excluded from both because you didn't submit under maybe the more proper avenue of going through the NOSI rather than the Omnibus?
At NINDS, we can consider it. That happens actually quite frequently, especially as dates change. It could be that the applicant just wasn't aware that there's been an update to it, or there's a new NOSI. So we sort of see that internally, and we can add it.
Awesome, thanks.
Do other institutes do the same, or
Yeah.
it's specific to NINDS?
Yeah, it's same for NIA also.
I will just say same for us. If you are in the gray zone and we discuss it within the division, then we'll mention that, okay, this application is responsive to the NOSI, even if they didn't write it. But I think the good thing about writing, if you think you are a good fit for a NOSI, is that, from my understanding, is that the reviewer that will review your application, we kind of have more expertise, like, for the topic related to the NOSI, so it's a plus to mention it. It's just the reviewer that you will get, they will have more expertise about the topic.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Cheryl, great question. Always wondered about that myself. So wonderful question. Thank you so much, everybody. You have contacts, or you will get contacts of all the participants. I mean, all the presenters in this event, in this webinar. Feel free to reach out to us with questions if you have, and we will try our best to answer. Thank you for joining us today for this event. I think it was useful. It was very useful for me. I learned something new myself today, and I've been in this area for quite a while. And I still, every time I listen to this wonderful group of presenters that NIH always puts on those sessions, always learn something new and important. So come to more of those webinars. We will have more coming in the next few months. And hopefully our NIH colleagues are also having those events hosted by other organizations. If you have any questions related to Accelerator Network or what we can do for you, especially if you are located in the Southeast region of the United States, that would be fantastic. If not, we're still interested to hear from you and would love to talk to you more. Thanks again, and we'll see you at our next event. Thank you.